All right, today on The Explainer, we're diving into a legal case that is just wild. It seems to defy all logic, and it all starts with a simple online deal that goes completely off the rails. So, get this. Here's the big question for today. How can someone be found guilty not once, but twice, only to have the Supreme Court come in and just throw it all out? I mean, case closed, right? Apparently not. So, how on earth does that happen? We're going to find out. Okay, so let's look at the legal roller coaster for this guy, Liu Junhong. First, the district court. Guilty. He appeals, goes to the high court. And, yep, guilty again, though they did knock a little off his sentence. But then it gets to the Supreme Court, and bam! Both verdicts get tossed out. Everything goes right back to square one.
So you gotta be asking, how does a guilty verdict just get thrown away like that? Well, to understand it, we've got to go back to the very beginning. Okay, so the main character in this whole drama is a man named Liu Junhong, and his story starts with something that, honestly, a lot of people might be tempted by, renting out his bank accounts for what looked like some super easy cash.
Yeah, this whole thing was basically an easy money trap. Let's dig into exactly how this scheme was set up. You see, Liu was in deep with credit card debt, like drowning in it. So when some stranger online who called themselves Yan Air offered to pay him just to use his bank accounts, it must have felt like a lifeline. He handed over the logins for 5 different accounts, and for that, he got about 20,000 new Taiwan dollars. You know, it probably seemed like a quick, simple fix for his financial nightmare, even if it felt a little off.
But, and this is a huge but, Liu knew something was up. This wasn't a case of him being totally naive. We have his chat logs. This is a direct quote. He literally asks the scammer, "Will there be a Money Laundering Prevention Act problem?" I mean, come on. He even admitted his account had been frozen before for doing something similar. So yeah, he absolutely knew he was playing with fire. And that fire? It burned a lot of people. While Liu was pocketing his relatively small fee, a whole criminal organization was using his accounts as a pipeline to steal millions. Just look at this. This is just a sample of the victims. We're talking romance scams, investment fraud, real people losing their life savings, millions of dollars all flowing through the accounts that Liu rented out. He wasn't just some guy making a quick buck. He became a money mule, a key part of a huge criminal machine. So when you put it all together, he knew the risks, and real people lost a ton of money. It's really no surprise that the first 2 courts looked at this and had zero trouble finding him responsible, right? The legal idea they used is something called indirect intent. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine you give your car keys to a friend who is obviously totally drunk. Now, you're not the one driving, but you can pretty much guess something awful is going to happen, and you let it happen anyway. That's the essence of indirect intent. So, looking at those chat logs, the district court said, "Yep, that's indirect intent." And the sentence they handed down? 8 months in prison. Okay, but the story doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. Liu's lawyers appealed, and this is where the whole case takes a major turn. They brought in a totally new angle, his mental health. They argued that Liu had what's called diminished capacity, which basically means it was way harder for him to really understand what he was getting into. And you can see right here how the 2 courts saw things completely differently. The first court, the district court, was all about his awareness. They said, look at the texts, he knew. But the high court, they shifted the focus to his capacity. They said, okay, but given his mental state, his depression, being on the autism spectrum, his ability to actually judge that risk was seriously compromised. And the high court actually bought that argument. They didn't say he was innocent. They kept the guilty verdict. But they did reduce his sentence down to 6 months. So he's still on the hook, just a little less on the hook, I guess. Okay, so let's recap. 2 different courts have now agreed this guy is guilty. So what gives? Why did the Supreme Court step in and blow the whole thing up? Well, it all came down to one single crucial mistake, a procedural error. This right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole puzzle. It's a legal term called an auxiliary declaration. You see, because of Liu's diagnosed conditions, a court had already put this special protection in place for him. What it means is that for any big legal or money decision, like signing a contract or, and this is the important part, settling a lawsuit, he legally needed his helper to consent. And in his case, that helper was his mom. Think of it like a legal shield to protect people who might be vulnerable. So here's exactly how the Supreme Court broke it down. The High Court got on Liu's case for having a bad post-crime attitude because he hadn't tried to settle with the victims. But wait, settling a lawsuit? That's a major legal action. And because of that auxiliary declaration, Liu was legally incapable of doing that by himself. And here's the kicker. The court never even notified his mom, his legal helper. So they were basically punishing him for not doing something that the law itself said he couldn't do alone. It's a total catch-22. And that, said the Supreme Court, was a fundamental procedural error. A huge one. At this point, it wasn't even about whether Liu was guilty or not. The real problem was that the justice system had failed to follow its own rules. Rules that were specifically created to protect someone just like him. Now, this might sound like a minor technicality, like some little piece of legal jargon. But it's not. It actually points to one of the most important ideas in our whole legal system. The procedure, the process, is everything. So what are the big takeaways here? Well, first, there's the really obvious one. Do not, under any circumstances, sell or rent out your bank account. It makes you a money mule, and the consequences are really, really bad. But there's a more nuanced lesson, too. This case shows us that the legal system has these rules for a reason, to protect everyone, including the accused. Justice isn't just about getting to a verdict, it's about getting there the right way. And just to be super clear, this doesn't mean Liu Junhong walks free. The Supreme Court didn't say he was innocent. All they did was hit a giant reset button. His case gets sent right back to the High Court for a do-over. But this time, they have to follow the proper procedure and make sure his mother, his legal helper, is part of the process. And that kind of leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. This case, it was never really just about one guy. It's about the integrity of the whole system. And it makes you ask a really important question. If we're willing to bend the legal rules for people we think are guilty, then how can we ever be sure those same rules will be there to protect us when we're innocent?